Hello there. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Don Mills LRT line. This is an LRT line that was proposed as part of the Transit City project, but was ultimately unbuilt. So, let's get into the video. The origins of the Don Mills LRT begins in the mid-2000s as part of the Transit City proposal. Transit City, briefly described, was a massive transit plan proposed in 2007 by the City of Toronto and the Toronto Transit Commission. The plan would see 7 brand new light rail lines built around Toronto. One of these was an LRT line along Don Mills Road, running between the Bloor-Danforth line in the south and the Sheppard line in the north. This line may have been around 17.6 kilometers long and was estimated to cost $675 million to build. Construction on the line was supposed to start in 2012, with the line opening in 2016. The idea of some form of higher order transit on Don Mills is not new, however. Back when the Downtown Relief Line was proposed in the 1980s, the expectation was that one day the subway line may head north from Danforth Avenue to Eglinton Avenue. This idea would become part of the Don Mills LRT line. Don Mills, being chosen as one of the streets to be part of the plan, can be chalked up to a multitude of reasons, one of these being its location. Don Mills Road sits roughly in between Yonge Street and Line 1 to the west and the Scarborough RT to the east, both of these lines being predominantly north-south in orientation. The Don Mills LRT would fill in the roughly 11-kilometer gap between the two lines and offer another north-south line for residents nearer to Don Mills than to either Yonge Street or one of the various major roads in Scarborough. As well, part of the methodology of this line was to also relieve some of the ridership congestion on Line 1. People could instead take the LRT to Line 2 and one day possibly even straight downtown instead of having to deal with the crowded mess that is Line 1. According to the environmental assessment for the project, which will be my main source of information for this video, the Don Mills corridor back in 2001 was home to around 430,000 residents, and had an employment base of around 176,000 people. New developments were expected to bring an additional 35,000 new residents by 2021. As well, 20,000 new jobs were expected by 2011, and then an additional 14,000 by 2021. The Don Mills LRT was also part of the much larger Don Valley Corridor Transportation Master Plan, or DVCTMP. This plan was developed in cooperation with the TTC, GO Transit, and York Region Transit as a way to address the growing need for better transit in the area. This master plan, alongside the Don Mills LRT, would also call for York Region Transit Express bus service to be expanded and cross-boundary Viva bus service, additional commuter parking at TTC and GO stations, increased service on the GO Richmond Hill line and Stouffville line, and a new GO station along or near Eglinton Avenue. This particular item would be subject to its own assessment by GO Transit and would likely either be part of the Richmond Hill line with the station east of Winford in the Don Valley, or as part of a future Midtown GO line. Lastly, the Don Mills LRT was also loosely part of the East Bayfront project, which was looking at expanded streetcar service into the Portlands and the proposed developments therein. While a long-term goal, there was a belief that the Don Mills LRT would eventually travel south of Danforth and either into the downtown core or into the redeveloped Portlands, or have a connection to them at the very least in some way. The Don Mills LRT project was split into 3 areas, those being the North Corridor, which was the section of the line on Don Mills Road between Steeles Avenue and Overlea Boulevard. This section of the line would run on its own right-of-way down the middle of Don Mills Road. The Central Corridor, which was the section of the line between Overlea Boulevard and Danforth Avenue. The southern portion of this section would likely be underground due to the small road space available for a surface right-of-way. Lastly, there was the South Corridor, which was the proposed southern extension of the line into the downtown core. The project itself would have likely been built in either 2 or 3 phases, with phase 1 being the main portion of the line operating from a connection at line 2 to a connection to line 4 at Don Mills Station. Future phases would see the line extended north from Don Mills to Steeles Avenue and possibly into York Region, and a possible southern extension from Danforth Avenue into the downtown core. The construction of this line would also replace the 25 Don Mills bus, at least south of Shepherd at the start. In the first phase of construction, the north end of the line would have started at Don Mills Station. Here, the line would connect to Line 4, various TTC bus routes, as well as York Region buses and the Viva Green Line, at least at the time. It is not known whether or not this station would have been underground, as the line never made it that far into the design process. I would hope that this station would have been underground, as Don Mills Station, or at least the subway section of it, is particularly deep underground, and a transfer from the Line 4 platforms to a surface level LRT stop would be brutal. It is also possible that Don Mills Station may have been renamed to possibly Fairview, but we will never know. Regardless of that, the line would have then traveled south, making stops at Parkway Forest, Graydon Hall, York Mills Avenue, possibly being named York Height, Mallard, the northern point of the Donway Circle, Lawrence Avenue East, with this stop possibly being named Don Mills, assuming the current Don Mills gets its name changed, the southern point of the Donway Circle, Barber Green, and then Eglinton Avenue East, or Science Center Station as it will be known. Here the line would connect to Line 5, the Eglinton Crosstown line, as well as multiple bus routes. It is not known what form this station would take beyond it likely being at surface level, with the Line 5 station being located underground. In an ideal world to me, this station would have been similar to the old streetcar platforms at Bloor Station, with a direct connection to the lower level from the platforms. This, however, would require a bit more real estate than what would be required for the standard LRT stops that are being designed today for routes such as the Eglinton Crosstown and the Finch West LRT. A direct connection to the lower levels would require both stair and elevator access from the platforms. Regardless of that, the line would then continue south, making its next stop at St. Denis, out front of the Ontario Science Centre. This station may have been named Flemington Park, and then a stop at Gateway Boulevard and Overley Drive. The next stop on the line would have been at the east end of Thorncliffe Park Drive and the East York Town Centre. Following this, the line would then make another stop at the west end of Thorncliffe Park Drive, and then finally a stop at Millwood Road. From here things get a little murky though, as the TTC and the city had not fully nailed down exactly what corridor they were going to use to connect the line to the Bloor-Danforth subway, or Line 2, and multiple corridors were being considered. The first of these was Alignment C1, which looked at the line descending into the Don Valley via Redway Road and then linking up to Bayview Avenue. From here, the line would then proceed south to a stop at Castle Frank Station. This alignment also called for a mid-block station at the Evergreen Brickworks. Alignment C2 was much of the same, although this one would see the LRT completely skip the Thorncliffe Park neighborhood and follow the Don Mills Road into the valley. From here, the line would then follow the Don Valley Parkway before either branching off to a connection at Castle Frank Station, similar to that of Alignment C1, or follow the DVP to a connection at Broadview Station. Much like the C1 alignment, this one would have been dropped since it encounters the same problems as the former alignment, that being the line would be at the bottom of the valley, rendering any connection to the subway, be it at Castle Frank or Broadview, completely useless. As well, this specific alignment would completely bypass the Thorncliffe Park neighborhood, which is one of the densest in Toronto. Alignments C3 and C4 follow more sensible routes. C3 would see the route follow O'Connor Drive and Broadview Avenue to Broadview Station. Alignment C4 would follow Pape Avenue to Pape Station. Both alignments would, however, have to be built underground, as there was no room at surface level for the right-of-way. The location for the tunnel portal was not decided at the time, and so it is unknown where the transition from surface to subway would occur. Both alignments would also call for 2 mid-block stations, one at Cosburn Avenue with a connection to the 84 Cosburn bus, the other at Mortimer Avenue with a connection to the 62 Mortimer bus. Both terminuses, be it at Pape and Broadview, would offer connections to both Line 2 and buses, while Broadview would also boast a connection to the streetcar network. Ultimately though, I believe Pape would be the chosen alignment, as it offers a more centralized approach from both the north and the south. As well, Pape just seems to be preordained as the connection point between any downtown-bound line and Line 2. For a brief time, Chester was examined as a possible terminus of the line, although it was quickly dropped as the station did not have the capabilities of being a terminus station. As well, since Chester is on a residential street, the necessary property required for the line was unavailable. The Don Mills LRT project from its start would also have ideas for future extensions built right into it, although only one of these extensions was ever given any reasonable amount of thought, that being the northern extension to Steeles Avenue. This extension, however, would be deferred to a future phase as it would require input from York Region Transit on how it would integrate with their plans. Traveling north from Don Mills, the next stop on the line would have been at Esterbrook Avenue. From there, the line would then pass through the Peanut, with these stops possibly being named Oriole Park, and then another stop at Van Horn Avenue. The line would then make a stop at Finch Avenue East, with this stop possibly being named Seneca Hill. This stop would also be nearby to the Seneca College Newnham campus. Traveling north, the line would then make another stop at McNichol Avenue, and then a stop at Cliffwood Road. This northern extension would reach its northern terminus at Steeles Avenue East. This station would offer connections to both the TTC bus network as well as the York Region Transit bus network. There were also possible ideas of maybe even a future extension beyond Steeles into York Region, although this was more of a very far off long-term goal. The idea of extending the line south into the downtown core or to the Portlands was also looked at, although it was never heavily developed. Multiple possible alignments were proposed, although these alignments were at odds with what would become the Transit City model. While we know of what is today's Transit City model as the network of LRTs that use large light rail vehicles made by Bombardier and Alstom and are built to standard track gauge, the alignments discussed for the southern extension are at odds with this. This is, however, to be expected, as the original intention of Transit City was not to use the larger LRVs we currently are using, but was instead to use the TTC's Flexity Outlook streetcars. The Transit City lines, for all intents and purposes, were originally intended to be a part of and integrated with the streetcar network, and not as independent LRT lines. This was in essence a rebirth of the high-speed streetcar idea that was floated in the late 1970s for the Scarborough RT and the unbuilt Etobicoke RT lines. This idea, however, would come to an end when the province and its newly created organization Metrolinx took the reins on the Transit City project. Part of this shift in management would include the changing of the track gauge of all Transit City lines from the TTC's gauge to standard gauge. In doing this, the Don Mills LRT alongside all other Transit City LRT lines would be incompatible with the TTC streetcar network. The sole exception to this was the Waterfront West LRT line. This would thus render the idea of a southern extension of the Don Mills LRT into downtown Toronto or the Portlands dead. The Don Mills LRT as a whole, however, would not be built, as it and the rest of Transit City was cancelled in 2010 by then Mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford. Unlike the Eglinton Crosstown and Finch West LRT lines, however, the Don Mills LRT was not resurrected. So why wasn't it? Simply put, the Don Mills LRT was a flawed idea from the start. After the scope of Transit City was changed and integration with the streetcar network was tossed out, the Don Mills LRT was essentially truncated to Pape Station. This, as one could guess, would just dump passengers onto Line 2 and eventually the overburdened Line 1. As well, the tunneling required to get the line to Pape Station brought with it rumblings that perhaps an LRT is not the answer here. As it stood, the LRT would be good at getting people to the subway, but not into the downtown core, thus burdening the pre-existing network. Any line in this position would have to travel into the downtown core and become a relief line for the pre-existing subway. This, however, also completely changes the purpose of the line. The Don Mills LRT was meant to be a middle ground solution to transporting people. Short enough stop spacing to allow more local access while being faster than the bus. This idea, however, is incompatible with the idea of a downtown relief line, which is meant to be a rapid transit line to rapidly move people from the suburbs into the downtown core. Local access is not as important in this case. In this regard, the purpose of the line changes from trying to serve as many areas as possible to trying to serve as many people as possible. It's finally in this regard that an LRT no longer fits the job. A relief line would quickly outstrip the LRT line's capacity. The Don Mills LRT would help bring eyes back to the downtown relief line plan, however, which foresaw a subway running between Osgood Station and Pape Station. From here, the idea of a further northern extension of this project would eventually take hold. This idea would be solidified in 2015 when the Young Relief Network study was published, showing that the downtown relief line would have to connect to Line 4 at Don Mills Station for it to have any real effect on the overcrowding of Line 1. The Don Mills LRT, while probably pulling passengers off of Line 1, would have just dumped them onto Line 2 at Pape Station, and thus make the overcrowding situation at Bloor-Yonge Station worse. There was talk about having both the Don Mills LRT and Relief Line, with both lines terminating at Pape Station. However, this idea would have likely gone nowhere, as the linear transfer it would have created would have not been popular. That said, it is important to address why we even had this idea to begin with. Simply put, Toronto is at a massive deficit in regards to transit. However, the cost of subway construction in this city has ballooned out of control, and so cheaper alternatives are looked for. This is not a new idea, and dates all the way back to the late 1970s, when the then Metropolitan Toronto declared the Line 2 extensions to Kennedy and Kipling to be the last, as the cost of construction was getting too high for the city. Cheaper alternatives such as LRT would have been used going forward. This would change when Network 2011 was announced in the 1980s, although that was a provincial project, and so one could expect a larger provincial financial contribution to it. Now, however, with the city back to trying to fix its transit problems, the ugly issue of cost resurfaced. Even after the province would take the reins of Transit City, cost would still be an issue. It is for this reason that an LRT on Don Mills was considered over the relief line in the first place. Even today, in 2021, we are still grappling with this problem, as we see with the downtown relief line, which was to be a subway, but was then replaced by the Ontario line, which is to be a light metro as a means to lower the cost. The Don Mills LRT was estimated to cost $675 million in 2007. That would be around $850 million today for a 17.6 kilometer line. By comparison, the downtown relief line from Osgood to Pape Station at a length of only 7.4 kilometers alone was estimated to cost between $8 and $9.2 billion. That doesn't even include a future extension to Don Mills Station. The Ontario line, which will run for 15.5 kilometers between the Exhibition and Science Centre station, is estimated to cost around $10 to $12.4 billion. You can see by this alone how out of control the cost of subway construction in Toronto is, and why LRT was and is so popular, even for a time on Don Mills Road. Ultimately, though, the Don Mills LRT was simply the wrong tool for the job, or more accurately, the wrong tool when the job changed. The general idea is sound, a rapid transit line operating from Sheppard Avenue to Danforth Avenue. What it lacked, however, was a connection into the downtown core, and the ability to cope when the job required of it changed. It's one thing for the line to be a more local-oriented route with stops every 500 meters or so. It's another when the scope of what is being asked of it changes. You cannot conceivably run a relief line style service with local stop spacing, at least out in the suburbs. That, however, is a topic for another time. When the reality of needing the line to go into the downtown core set in, the flaws of the idea began to show, and in this regard you can't have it both ways. As well, building the Don Mills LRT would have truncated any sort of relief line to Pape Station, thus hurting any possibility of relieving the congestion on Line 1 in any meaningful way. It is for this reason that the cancellation of the Don Mills LRT was ultimately a good thing, as it not only preserved the possibility of a relief line north of Danforth, but in a way brought back the entire idea of the downtown relief line back to the forefront of transit planning. The proposed idea was great. The proposed execution of it, however, was not. And with that, I will end this video here. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it and want to see more like it, please hit that subscribe button because there's more videos like it on the channel and there's more videos like it on the way. If there's anything you want to say about the Don Mills LRT line, don't be afraid to do so in the comment section down below. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.